Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's International Affairs Broadcasting live from Dhaka's Gulshan studio. My name is Shamsulam Pantho and I shall be bringing you the latest headlines that have taken place over the weekend. But before I do so, let me introduce my panelists today. We have in the studio John Dalton, who has appeared on this show many times before and is of course an international consultant, will be giving us his take on the world global issues. Alongside, we will be joined by Norman Floyd Barnes, who is SATV's geopolitical correspondent from Washington, D.C. I want to give the breaking news. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has been captured by the U.S. forces in an attack late into yesterday. We have seen the U.S. Delta Force aircrafts are flying into Venezuela's capital, Caracas, and is initiating the bombing of various military infrastructure. Doing so afterwards, Nicolas Maduro has been captured in his own country, and he was watching television while doing so, and he was quickly dragged into custody as he tried to flee his steel-enforced room. Of course, it is not only Mr. Maduro and his wife, it is also his wife. I want to begin with John Dalton. The news, as you've heard me recapping, it is quite important, as we have not seen in the last 25 years such an action that the U.S. administration has taken, and this time around is U.S. President Donald Trump. I know that we have been covering this incident for the last 3 to 4 months, and we understand there was some kind of soft power projection in the Caribbean Sea. But this time around, in the new year, in the new month, we have seen that a leader of a sovereign state has been captured by the U.S. forces. And when the U.S. media tries to analyze this issue, they say there was a DAA involvement in this incident. I want to understand how you felt.
Well, I was shocked in a way. But let me try to get both sides, and then I'll say where I end up on it, okay? Maduro, for the last 15 years or so, has been a very, very impotent leader of Venezuela. I mean, poverty has increased, the oil revenues have been way down. He has organized at the grassroots level sort of his own private militia. Some of them are gangs who enforce the peace at the local level. He's not a good guy. It's widely assumed that he stole the last election. 30 European countries have do not recognize Venezuela, do not recognize him as the legitimate head of Venezuela. The United States indicted him on drug and arms charges in 2020. But as you have indicated, it's very, very rare and impossible that somebody like that, the bad guy, would be like ripped out of his own country for these kind of charges. So that there's some justification for a criminal to be removed and brought to the United States. It was done for the leader of the drug cartel in Mexico, you may remember. Yes. That was also done, that El Chapo is now out of Mexico in the United States to face charges for drugs. It is also was done way back in the day. Noriega in Panama was taken out also for the same sort of reasons. But it is very much an overreach of American power. It's sort of a cowboy action that somebody would go into another country and take the president, his wife, and his son out of that country to bring him to the United States to face charges. Now, don't forget, however, this is just one guy. And the regime will not change. The sort of a Bolivarian revolution will still go on in Venezuela. There are so many, many tentacles down all throughout the government, down to the local level. Maduro's gone, but the socialist philosophy that guides that country is still in place and will remain in place. And that it's impossible for me to imagine that Donald Trump, who says, well, we're going to rule the country, we're going to capture the oil, we're going to be in charge, that can't be done. I mean, the legislature, the Congress in Venezuela will never approve something like that. Maybe the oil companies have a lot of power and can do something, but I doubt very much that the United States can be in a position to control and rule another country in the Western Hemisphere. This was an action that was taken. Apparently it's successful in some eyes. For me, it was an overreach of American authority. It's the sort of came out of the national security strategy, which was just adopted, this sort of Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, which allows him to sort of have a Pax Americana in all of the South and North America. But it'll have to play out a bit, but he does not have the authority, even under the Constitution, to take an action like this against a sovereign nation. This is more like Putin in Ukraine. It's more like Netanyahu in Gaza. It is a extension beyond what is constitutionally authorized and which is consistent with international law. So let's hope that during the week cooler heads will prevail. Maduro's going to stay in the United States, I assume. But there's no way that the United States is going to be in a governing position in Venezuela with the acceptance of the United Nations and other powers.
Thank you so much for this analysis. But the story does not end there with the capture of Nicolas Maduro. We know that Donald Trump came into a press briefing immediately after this news had broken down. And he had mentioned that we will be running the affairs of the nation of Venezuela. And also he had been theorizing the oil reserves of Venezuela as some kind of stolen oil. These rhetorics, these narratives are quite important, as the US president is saying that he is going to wait for a just, judicious transition. That's the word that Donald Trump had used. But according to Reuters media agency, we see that the Venezuelan vice president Rodriguez, Delcy Rodriguez, is in Russia, according to 4 sources. And according to the Venezuelan constitution, that in the case where there is no president, then the vice president shall be running the day-to-day affairs. That is just one of the stories that are coming out. We also knew that there was a $50 million reward for any kind of information regarding Nicolas Maduro. He's been convicted, or he will be convicted for these illegal drug trafficking issues that United States military has been dealing in the Caribbean Sea. My question would be the fact that we have not seen such an escalation in the Caribbean as of recent. And Nicolas Maduro's country, he has been openly arming the militia in the nation in the face of an attack like this. However, we did theorize whether US will have boots on the ground. Well, that did take place yesterday, and the capture of Nicolas Maduro has been done in the background of heavy bombing towards some of the military infrastructure, or those who were trying to shelter Nicolas Maduro from the US capture. So I wanted to understand what are the other stories that we'll be hearing, whether all the lawmakers in the United States will accept this, because I know for a fact that a nation like China is coming out stating that the United States has broken international law.
Well, China and Russia are the major clients for Venezuelan oil. So 80% of their oil goes to those 2 countries. And the United States, by stopping some of the shipments out of Venezuela, which is sanctioned by the United States, they're getting into some sort of a conflict, economic conflict, which is going to have consequences. But you know, I don't want to go back too far into the history of this, but the whole idea of Hugo Chavez, when he became a socialist leader of Venezuela, was to nationalize the oil industry. And ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips, which were the major American interests there at the time, were forced to accept a partnership agreement with Venezuelan companies. And so they lost millions of dollars, which was adjudicated in the United States, and there were some settlements in favor of the oil companies against Venezuela, but it's been very, very difficult to get the money to be paid back. I'm sure that in Mr. Trump's view of things, there's no question that this action should be addressed, and that these ExxonMobil claims and the claims of other American oil companies should come into play in the country. The largest oil reserves in the world are in Venezuela, but they're only the 7th highest producer of oil, refined oil. So there's a long way to go between what they have, the resources they have, and what they're able to sell. And Trump is saying that we're going to send in the best American companies to do this and to do that. But you know, Venezuela is no little tiny little country. This is a major, major power in South America. And so, as I said, the Congress of the country, the Bolivar Revolution, will continue, and the Bolivarian Revolution will continue. And having companies come in outside and sort of take over the country and will run the country, I mean, this is really, I think, a gross exaggeration of the capacity of the United States to manage some other country in their own economic interest. And I think that the American Congress, without a War Powers Act, Trump has extended his power, saying that under Article 2 of the Constitution, which is an Emergency Powers Act, he had the right to do this, to protect the United States. But many, many congressmen are going to say, no, no, this is an act of war. You need a War Powers Act declaration, a law from the United States, as you did in Nigeria, as you did in any other actions that you take, sort of these arbitrary actions. So this is going to have to play out during this week. When Congress reconvenes, I think there'll be a lot of hard discussions about should the United States have done this. He claims that all of their narco trafficking coming out of Venezuela is affecting the United States, but 75% of that goes to Europe. You know, the shipment of all of those cocaine is the major stuff that's being produced. The cocoa plants that are in from Colombia and all the rest of South America are finalized into cocaine in Venezuela, and they go to Europe.
Right.
They don't go to the United States per se. The fentanyl comes from Mexico and through Canada from other sources. So the facts don't back up what he's saying about Venezuela. They do back up that Maduro's a bad guy. Maduro's out of the picture. But Venezuela is not going to cede its sovereignty totally on the basis of like one adventure like this by the United States.
Thank you so much for your observation regarding the U.S. position on Venezuela and as well as the illicit drug, that cocaine, which travels to Europe. But we have our geopolitical correspondent connected via Zoom, Ambassador Norman Floyd Barnes from Washington, D.C. I believe this is a very reckoning time for the nation of United States of America. As we understand that Nicolas Maduro has been captured, but there are historical cases that we see spanning from Latin America. We have Manuel Noriega, who's leader of Panama, and of course the U.S. invasion of Panama just happened and he was captured and he's now tried and imprisoned in the United States of America. We have Saddam Hussein of Iraq, who was tried by Iraqi court and executed in 2006. We have Ahmed Abu Khattala of Libya. Reason was a Benghazi attack killing U.S. diplomats. But the position of Nicolas Maduro remains a bit different from the names I just mentioned. I want to understand how Norman Floyd Barnes felt about this issue, as Donald Trump has said that he shall be running the affairs of Venezuela, a sovereign nation.
Greetings. Greetings this morning. I've been apologize for my delay. I just finished a high-level briefing regarding the issue that's happening in Venezuela. Uh, we have a hot mess. It's a lot happening right now. There's a lot of answers has to be um, addressed with our government, Congress, and the world is base has been shifted. There's been a major shift. The United States has basically seized the country of Venezuela. We now know, the world now know that this purpose was to overthrow the existing government. We have 15,000 military soldiers in that president and his wife. They are now en route to New York City for there'll be trial for narco terrorism. And there's a shift that's been made right now in terms of the government. There's a vacuum. Right now, the current vice president has assumed the role as president, but there's discussions right now. Actually, there's discussion on which way she's going to go. Is she going to consider, as she stated, that the uh, president, the current president, well, the ex-president is the only president, or she's going to comfortably submit to the ways of the America First way. There's plans in place. There's military options. There's options inside the country. There's issues with coups, the military going on right now. A lot of things is happening right now. There's no final solution. What's going on? There's plans. There's things in place. But right now, the United States has annexed, I'll use the word annex, the country of Venezuela in terms of with the oil productions. We have plans, and we're going to put oil companies, large oil companies, in there with the possibility of controlling the oil flow of the world. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world right now, and the United States is in a position to manage that and take control of that. So basically, the whole world is shifting now because now the Monroe document that we are now shifting has in terms of world policemen into basically protected of the Western Hemisphere and basically is resources. Venezuela has a lot of resources, and they are associated with several other countries in this region, including, I will announce, Cuba. Cuba has also been announced on the situation that it could be possibly part of this process. So we have just started a process. Remember, it's not complete. It's just started a process of controlling the Western Hemisphere and the flow of trade and commerce around the world. So Russia and China is basically uh, processing this, and we should have a response to them shortly. Russia is also processing it, and we should hear a response to that. And so this is going to affect every single incident that we are involved in the world right now. So this is not just I woke up this morning and decided to do this. This has been planned for months. As you see, this is a very complex operation, involved many resources, our military, our intelligence services, our Justice Department, and the CIA dealing that have been going on in that country for many, many months. So right now it's a transition period. How well that transition go, it depends on several people's responses and how the rest of the world deals with this. But right now, the United States has a plan to deal with this either way. So the 2026 is going to provide a exciting time. Exciting time. I don't know how people, and the world is now adjusting to this. And so right now we have to just wait and see what's the next step and what next shoe is going to drop. But right now, change is about.
That was an astounding observation by Norman Floyd Barnes in Washington, D.C. on the position of the United States administration and its military. I want to have a short question before I can go to a break. Usually the U.S. is subject, or people say that the United States often participate in regime change operations, but this time around it wasn't just regime change, it was a direct confrontation, a walk-in into the gates of a sovereign nation and to remove or to hijack, if not kidnap, a leader of a sovereign nation, leader who has been the president of Venezuela since 2013. Before I can ask this question, do you think that this will create more hostilities between two sides of the barrier? We have the Ukraine-Russia war, we have Israel and Palestine going head to head, we have tensions between China and Japan. Do you think the actions of US President Donald Trump and his military will give birth to a World War III-like situation?
Well, as Norman said, we don't know yet. I mean, this is still early days in terms of this struggle, so to speak. But if you look back at the United States history, we don't have to go too far back. We go back, look what they did in Libya. That situation is still unsettled. Look what they did in Iraq. The United States went into Iraq and toppled a dictator. That situation is still unsettled. We have a very, very poor record of going in and trying to overthrow a government and put something else in place. So, as I said initially, if you focus on the fact that this is Maduro only and not the regime, then we're relying on the vice president, who is now legally empowered under their constitution to take over the duties of Venezuela. If she is cooperative and is willing to work in some cooperative way with the United States, that's somewhat possible. But I mean, this is a major deviation from American policy, that somebody would go in and try to claim that we are going to take over the resources of the country in the name of the national security strategy, the sort of Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. If that is now the American policy, that we are a enforcer of international law and that we will seize resources where they are in our interest. And that's an enormous break from tradition. And as Norman has pointed out, though, this is still early days. Let's see where the dust settles. I can't personally, in my experience in other countries, I was in Manila when Marcos was airlifted from Manila out of the country, sent to Hawaii. His whole family went with him, and there was a changeover in the government at that time. This is sort of reminiscent of that in a way, that they're taking the leader out and putting in